Hey everyone. I thought I'd share why I think the Zelos and the Empyrean are great choices this month of March in the raid as prizes to get you ready for April's raid cycle, which is going to be a garrison cycle. We know that. We also know it's going to deal explosive and penetrating damage. So we're going to need a tank, we're going to need mortar chuckers, or we can use the rocket fleet, the icebreaker. The icebreaker is definitely a good choice in this raid, but you're gonna need to score a lot of points. Like just for the icebreaker and the weapons, it's like 90 million points. Plus what you need to get before you even get there, which is the Empyrean at 15 million. So it's a lot of points. The Zelos and Empyrean are actually a much cheaper choice since you can get them for total of 31 million points this raid if you take the Empyrean, the Zelos, the new Mortar, and the new Mortar special available. Okay, and that gives you 30 days to build them, get them ready, and probably you could get started with a Zelos and 3 Empyreans or something like that. So this video now will show what I'm gonna build this month, not knowing exactly what the target looks like. So by the time we actually have a chance to fight the targets and test the build, I'm going to publish a new and updated version of this video, but this is what I'm going with now. As you know, both the Zelos and the Empyrean, they are generalists, meaning they have resistances, low resistances against all sorts of things. They're kind of ready to take all sorts of assault and siege targets. So like you look at the Empyrean, right? It has some bonus damage per second against ships, against buildings. It has a decent stun resistance already built in, a very low assault and siege deflection, which makes sense because this is a remote target mortar hull. So it should not be in the front line of fire taking damage, should stay at the back. So the low resistances and low deflection sort of makes sense. It's just there in case you take some splash damage from afar. It has a very nice field here, a friendly aura that buffs defenses and buffs damages and also triggers resonance. Okay, so we're gonna use that later. It has a reasonable-ish repair time of 2 hours, which at raid time means about an hour and 5 minutes per ship. Not bad. And builds in 4 days naked. Okay, so use the tokens, from raid and try to get some of them ranked. These guys, I expect they'll be able to do tier 5 in raid well. I don't expect the generalists to be able to do tier 6, the elite targets. But for the first month, again, like I said, gives you 30 days to build, and it's a lot cheaper than redeeming the icebreakers. The basic setup for this raid is to have one Zealous tank leading and 3 or 4 Empyreans coming from afar at maximum remote range, chucking mortars as fast as they can. Ships only need penetrating and explosive resistances. Maybe if they're like current FM targets, a little bit of a concussive resistance if they decide to put torpedo pylons in there. You will also need both anti-missiles and anti-mortars, so gales, hails, flanks, the best you have. And high evade also helps against missiles, right? So in a way that your armor and resistance, if anything, should lean explosive, because rocket turret damage is also it can't be countered, so mortars and missiles can. One good thing about the Zealous is it has a duality countermeasure, so not only you have plenty of slots, but you also have a built-in countermeasure in there with a little bit of a accuracy buff from the ship itself, just a 5% there, but it's better than nothing. You can also detect any mines or anything because it has thermal and sonar, so if you have anything to hit them underwater, great. But again, we don't know if there are going to be mines in the targets, but just in case, you're ready. Before I show ship builds, I just want to show the driving dynamic using these nice blocks, circles, and rectangles here. So let's imagine this is a cluster of enemy turrets here, okay, firing at you. The way to approach is You bring the Zelos tank offset to the side. You get that one ship in range. Let's say I put a launcher on it and the range is 94. I get this one in range, right? Yellow circle means that ship range. So 94, move it in range. Meanwhile, the Empyreans will be offset to the other side, so they don't take splash from rocket fire coming from that cluster of enemy turrets. And it also doesn't disable their aura. That's very important. So you see the light blue circle, here's the remote mortar range. So as soon as this guy gets in range, the mortars will fire. So, but at the same time, the Empyrean will not take damage because the turrets will be firing at the tanks. Important, that range has that aura has a range of 95. Each aura will give all ships 10% explosive damage and 10% explosive and penetrative resistance. So the resistance is very good for especially the tank, so you want to keep the Zelos in range. So if you have 4 Empyreans here, it's like adding 10% resistance to each one. So let's say the Zelos already has, let's say 85%. So one aura adds another 1.5%, the next aura 1.3, the next aura 1 point something. So you can move from 85 to 90 something percent resistance just by stacking 4 auras from the Empyreans on the Zelos. The other thing you can do is, for the Empyreans themselves, 4 of them here, adding up explosive damage. So their mortars will do a lot more damage the more Empyreans you stack. Okay? The other benefit is if you decide to use resonance capacitor, you can make your Empyreans faster and give them a damage buff that also going to stack a little bit more for each aura. So there's multiple benefits of this setup. Okay, while also only taking damage on one ship. If you build the icebreakers, you're going to have to stack them all and charge with them all. They're going to do well. I mean, they're made to kill these targets. But all 5 ships or 4 ships in your fleet will be taking damage. Here, only the Zelos takes damage if you drive well and if the target's anything like what we have in FM today. So that's the way to drive. Keep the Zelos in the aura. Keep the Empyreans offset to the side and to the back, so you avoid any splash damage from this area of impact while the turrets fire at the Zelos. Here are 2 tank options. The main difference, I mean, they all have the flanks 4. They all have Gales, so you can use Hails, Hail D, whatever the best you have. They all have the same specials, MX3, Agility System 4. You can use Agility System 3 if that's the best you have. Evade upgrade, if you don't have, that's available this raid for a low point price. Hydraulic resistors, which could be Speed System 5 if you don't have it. And Frontline Countermeasure System, which is also available in the raid if you don't have it. Then the key difference is the version on the right has D5X armors, which increases deflection more than the other setup, which has only 1. But both have the same armor, but if you look, the version on the right has a longer repair time because of the armor and a longer build time because of the armor. One way around that, you can get the same armor, pretty much the same resistance, there's a 1% difference here only, is by using 2 Panda mortars, which give you a lot of armor for pretty much 0 repair time. So the only reason that these pandas are here is to give the tank armor for no repair time. That's it. Okay, you see, you could leave the slots blank. You could put impact cannons here if you want. But these are just 2 setups. Some people, if anything, especially on the version on the right here where you have some room, you could use more X armors. It's better to have a little bit more explosive resistance than penetrating, just because rocket turrets are damage you cannot avoid, you cannot dodge, you cannot counter. So if anything, lean towards explosive defense more than penetrating. Okay, with the high evade and the flanks here, most missiles should miss. All right. The basics on the Empyrean. So there's a new mortar for it. There's a new special for it. So use those. Make the combo. You're gonna need Speed System 5 and Siege Battery 3. I mean, these are the basics. Okay, that setup builds in 11 days. Now for the other 2 slots, here are the options. Slot number 1, you can use either seismic rounds, and the benefits for this setup are 100% projectile speed, so your mortars will fall a lot faster, and you get this benefit from either seismic rounds or high velocity rounds, doesn't matter. The big difference is with seismic rounds you get extra 50% splash. With high velocity rounds you're gonna get extra building and wall damage. Right now I have no idea which one's more important. Garrison targets usually have a lot more turrets than ships. You know, so I'm actually leaning towards building 2 Empyreans each way. I might put 2 seismic rounds, like 2 ships with seismic rounds, 2 ships with high velocity rounds, and see what happens. If you don't have any of these specials, seismic rounds are in tier 5 FM, high velocity rounds are available in the raid price list. But if you don't have any, you could use Siege Targeting 3 as a second best option. Will give you 90% building damage, no extra projectile speed though. And with the new special, you cannot use Explosive System and you cannot use Combustion System. So, because this guy already gives you splash and spread and reload. Okay, you see the minus 35 spread plus 60% splash and that 80% mortar reload all come from this one special. So it's actually better than Combustion System, better than Explosive System. Okay, on the final slot, once you pick one of these guys, because once you pick one, you cannot use the other, by the way. But once you pick one of those for the last slot, here are the options. You could use Viscosity Regulator, gives you 50% splash on top of what you could get from here. So you could get 100% more splash if you combine these 2. Or even better, in my opinion, here I do have a preferred one, is the Narrow Firing Aperture. Came out with the Pride. You won't care about the corrosive damage bonus, but you do care about less spread and more splash. So you put this one in, and one of these 2, you're gonna have massive splash. And this mortar has 18 base splash, so it makes a difference. But this mortar has the downside of having 140 spread, so you're gonna have mortar shells falling all over the place. So reducing spread can also be helpful. Unless the turrets are massively spread across the platform, you really don't want that fire all over the place with 140 spread. If you don't have any of these 2, another option is just to use Splash Upgrade. Okay? So let's move on. These are the 2 setups I'm thinking about. So option A, you have, instead of Speed System 5, I've upgraded to Hydraulic Resistors. I upgraded Siege Battery to Resonance Capacitor. And the main reason is this ship is lower than the Zelos by about 11. The Zelos has 59 combat speed. This guy has 48. By putting the resistor, the capacitor here, we can actually gain 20% combat speed and stacking auras a little bit more than that. So they can potentially match. Like I said, one option is to use, then if I'm not having the building damage bonus from Siege Battery here anymore, just a generic 36% damage from here, right? High velocity rounds will give me the extra building damage and projectile speed. And Narrow Firing Aperture will take care of extra splash and reduced spread. So I end up with 114% splash, minus 65 spread, decent mortar reload bonus, and overall extra damage bonus on top of this assault and siege DPS. Then on top of everything else, the aura will help me have more bonus on the mortar damage. Each aura adds 10%. So with 4 auras, the damage you see here plus 36 will actually increase by 40, so it's about 76%. Then 80% building damage. So it's pretty neat. Now you see defense is really low. Again, this ship is not meant to be in the line of fire. It's meant to be further back. So there's very low resistances in this case, but there's 50% turret defense. You have to rely on that. The version on the right, I have more armor, but magically less repair time because I'm using a thermonuke launcher here to add a whole bunch of armor, 5,000 armor, for just a few minutes of repair time. So it's actually better than, repair time wise, the option on the left, right? But because of I'm adding this weapon and it's really heavy, I had to sacrifice a mortar, downgrade to a negotiator tree. So it's a trade-off. And here's the other setup where you see I'm not having any building damage bonus, but I am having a lot more splash, 165%. So I'm not sure which setup's better. Both should work well. If you don't care about the extra speed, but you want the building damage bonus, use Siege Battery instead of Capacitor. But I'm going to go with one of these two setups. Okay? And probably I'm just going to half build them until I see the targets. Leaving the heavy weapon slot empty and leaving this slot here empty until I can decide whether HVR is better or seismic rounds are better. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed, and good raid weekend for everyone.